If you've been waiting for Durham Region home prices to crash, well, that's not exactly what's happening. Almost 30% of homes in February sold over asking. And in early March, we're already up to almost 36%. But here's the strange part. Prices are still lower than this time last year. So how can both of those things be happening at the same time? If you're wondering whether to buy, sell, or you just want to watch the market, stick around. I'm going to break down exactly what's going on in Pickering, Ajax, Whitby, Oshawa, and Clarington right now, compare it to 2025, and explain what it all means for you in 2026. I'm Villia Truelove. I'm a local Durham Region real estate agent. If you're looking for help with your move or you just have a question, all of my contact information is right down below in the description. So let's start with the big picture so that you can see where we are. Across all of the Durham region, the average home price in February 2026 was $850,304. That's up about $31,000 from January, which is roughly a 4% jump in just 1 month. So yes, we're seeing prices bounce back a little. But here's the thing. If we look at February 2025, the average was $897,759. That means we're still down about 5% compared to last year. What does that mean in real life? If you're thinking about selling, you're not back to peak 2025 pricing yet. And if you're buying, you're not at last year's high prices either. But don't necessarily expect to find a bargain basement deal. The reality is that we're somewhere in between. Now, let's zoom in on the cities because Durham is definitely not one uniform market. In Pickering, the average price was about $906,000, which is actually a little bit down from January. Ajax is around $862,000, also slightly lower than last month. Whitby had a slight increase, landing at $929,000, still below February 2025. Oshawa moved up slightly to $713,000, and Clarington jumped the most to $798,000, but again, still below last year's numbers. So some areas are stabilizing and even bouncing up from January, while others are holding steady or dipping a little bit. Here's the key takeaway. How you price and market your home right now makes all of the difference. Homes priced realistically and marketed well are the ones selling quickly, while homes clinging to last year's numbers, they're sitting. Now, let's talk about the health of the market. We had 1,129 new listings come onto the market in February, which is slightly more than January. There are now 1,650 active listings, so buyers do have a little bit more to choose from. Sales were up from January at 454, but still below February 2025, which had 555 sales. And this is something that a lot of people are noticing right now. Sales volume is lower than last year. There are a few reasons for that, I think. Some buyers are still sitting on the sidelines waiting to see what happens with interest rates. Others are watching the economy in general and just feeling a little uncertain about making a big move right now. Of course, affordability is still a huge factor. Prices have come down a bit from last year, but they're still high. When you combine that with the overall cost of living, things like groceries, gas, insurance, and interest rates, it's causing some people to pause and take more time to think before making a move. And honestly, some people are still simply adjusting after the very fast market we saw during the peak when people felt pressure to buy quickly. Now, buyers have more time to compare homes, think through their decision, and often negotiate. So while fewer homes are selling overall, the buyers who are in the market tend to be much more serious and prepared. Now, months of inventory, that stayed at 3.6, which puts us in a balanced market. Not a crazy seller's market, definitely not a crash either. Here's something else that's interesting. The average days on market dropped pretty significantly. Listings are now selling in about 26 days on average, down from 39 in January. And property days on market went from 59 down to 41. That's a pretty big improvement. Serious buyers are out there, and when they see a good home at the right price, they're acting fast. And it's showing in the numbers. Almost 30% of February sales went over asking, and early March is already at almost 36% of homes selling over asking. The sale to list price ratio was 99%, meaning even the homes that aren't getting over asking are still often selling very close to or at the list price. So even though the market is quieter than 2025, the right homes are still selling. So those are the numbers, but what do they actually mean if you're planning to buy or sell this year? Because the strategy in this market is very different than it was even a year ago. If you're thinking about selling this year, here's what you need to know. Pricing is everything. If you price your home based on last year's numbers, you're very likely going to just sit on the market. But if you price for today's market and you combine that with strong marketing, you can be part of that 30 to 36% of homes selling over asking, or one of the many homes that are selling right at or close to their asking price. Now, some sellers are asking, should I underprice to spark multiples right now, or should I list at value? The truth is that there's no one size fits all answer to this question. It's very neighborhood and home specific. And it also comes down to your comfort level. Underpricing can definitely create competition, but it's also not guaranteed that you'll get your price. There's always the risk that it sells below expectations, and you may then find yourself taking it off the market and relisting it closer to where you actually feel the value lies. Pricing at value might attract fewer offers, but it can provide more certainty and better reflect what your home is actually worth today. The key is understanding your neighborhood, your goals, and your timing, and building a strategy around that. If you're thinking about moving in the next 6 to 12 months, a quick strategy call can help bring some clarity. We can look at your neighborhood, your numbers, and your timing. As always, there's no pressure. It's always just a set of plan. Now, let's talk about buyers, because this market actually creates some interesting opportunities. For one thing, buyers today generally have more breathing room. You're often able to include conditions, take time to review the home carefully, and negotiate, which was much harder to do a few years ago. At the same time, the best homes are still moving quickly. And if a home is positioned correctly and purposely priced low, there's a good chance that you could end up in multiple offers. When a home is priced properly and shows well, buyers are still stepping up. And that's why we're seeing so many homes selling over the asking price. So the opportunity right now is really about being strategic, understanding which homes are priced for today's market and which ones are still trying to chase 2025 pricing. For move-up buyers, this market can actually work even more in your favor. While your current home might sell for a little less than it would have last year, the home you're buying is also typically less expensive than it was a year ago. And because higher priced homes tend to move in larger dollar amounts, many move-up buyers are finding that the price gap between their current home and their next home has actually narrowed. That can make upgrading more affordable than it was when prices were higher. And over time, that larger home that you buy today often gains value faster in dollar terms, which can create strong long-term upside. The key for buyers right now is understanding today's pricing, because you don't want to end up paying 2025 prices in a 2026 market, whether that's in a multiple offer situation or when you're negotiating with a seller who still has last year's expectations. When you know where the market actually sits, you can make smart offers, negotiate confidently, and avoid overpaying. And this is where having someone walk through the numbers with you can make a big difference, because not every listing tells a full story about where the market actually is. So to recap, prices are up from January, but still below February 2025. The market is currently balanced, not crashing. Serious buyers are back, and 30 to 36% of homes are selling over asking. And correct pricing and marketing in 2026 is key. Now, I'm curious what you're seeing out there right now. Are homes in your neighborhood selling quickly, or are you noticing more listings that are just sitting on the market? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one of them. And if you want to keep track of Durham Region's market without having to follow all of these numbers yourself, make sure that you hit subscribe and that you turn on the notifications. If you're planning a move in the Durham region or Toronto this year, I'll leave my calendar link below so that we can talk about your specific situation. You can also call, text, or email me if you prefer. All of my info is right there. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in next month's market update.